American people are a unique and ever-changing population. Have you ever wondered just what it is that makes us American? Do we have a national identity? The 100 people you're about to meet roughly reflect the U.S. population with regards to age, race, gender, and state of residence, according to the 2000 U.S. Census. These 100 ordinary Americans were selected completely at random and were not culled from a larger group of participants. They come from big cities and small towns and from all walks of life. The opinions they express are completely their own. The United States, including all states and territories, has the third largest population in the world. With over 281 million people, we comprise 4% of the world's population. With so many different people and so many different perspectives, can there be such a thing as an average American?
To have a nice job, my career.
I think to start my own family.
I want there to be peace on earth, because I mean, what would we do without peace?
I want to be a millionaire.
To own my own business.
Get into college.
To be a good father, good husband.
Trying to be a good person.
I just try to be happy.
Since 1600, over 60 million immigrants have arrived in the U.S., more than to any other country in history. Peak immigration years were 1900 to 1914, with most of the immigrants arriving from Southern and Eastern Europe. In fact, 1/3 of the current population can trace their family's entrance to this 14-year time period. The population of the U.S. has doubled since 1945. Today, the population grows mainly through immigration. 11% of residents are foreign-born, and 15% speak English as a second language. Another 7% do not speak English at all yet. Not everyone in the United States is a product of our immigrant history. An estimated 5 million Native Americans were living here long before anyone else arrived. And many, if not most, African Americans are descended from people who were sold into slavery. Institutionalized racism did not end with the abolition of slavery in 1865. Blacks were routinely prevented from voting and legally segregated from whites up until a mere 40 years ago. And as recently as 1978, it was illegal to perform certain Native American dances. According to the U.S. State Department, the United States has broken nearly every treaty it ever signed with Native Americans.
There are a lot of different emotional scars that have been carried on from the past. When those scars and hurt from the past aren't dealt with, they get carried on from generation to generation. To my knowledge and to my research, there has never really been an apology from the U.S. government to what was done to the Native American.
Do you think everyone in America has the same level of opportunity? They should, but I don't think they do. Not really.
Definitely not. I think a lot of people are discriminated against because of different things, because of education, because of color.
Everybody in America has the same opportunity. It does. You know what I'm saying? You have racist cops and all. But the racist cop is not holding you down. The racist cop is not telling you not to go to school and sell drugs. They're not doing that.
Yes.
What does it take to succeed?
determination and patience.
Yes, they try.
I didn't start out with anything, but I've managed to get an education. I don't see why anyone else can't do the same thing.
I think they have it, they want to have it. They have the opportunity if they just take it.
In order to succeed, you really do have to, be well above average because, average salary doesn't get you a house.
The immigrants, I think they have limitations.
Well, I have a job here in Colombia. I don't. For people that is not from America, it's difficult.
Pues la oportunidad de trabajo, señor. Para serle honesto, la oportunidad de... Yo no quería ser esclavo, porque aquí tú eres esclavo. Es cierto que te están pagando, pero es esclavo.
So many people are trying to come here.
It's hard for them to come?
Yeah. Because it costs a lot of money.
Si uno quiere venir así, no, con un permiso es muy difícil, arriesga la vida y todo es difícil porque no hay oportunidades como en otros países.
How is your life here in America different than it was before?
It's better than 100 times. It's really good life here. That's because I can eat, I can survive my life very well, I can get the job, I can make the money. Anyway, it's better.
I like to go to school. You learn a lot. Because in African school, people like the teacher, they can hit you anytime they want.
Was it difficult to make the move, to make the change from Bangladesh to here?
Maybe first year, and after that they'll be okay.
The difference is I have to cook dinner by myself because my family in China, and I have to take care of myself.
Well, I don't have my family. I'm by myself here right now. That's difficult.
I miss my grandma and my dad.
Is there one common trait in our mostly immigrant heritage that unites us as one people? Is there a pick up and go get 'em gene that we share? Which, if any, components of our society connect us culturally to one another? The 2000 U.S. Census included a question about ancestry and asked respondents to list their nation or nations of origin. 7% of the respondents filled in simply American or United States. In addition to being the world's third most populous country, the U.S. is the second largest geographically. At 3.7 million square miles, the U.S. is almost as big as all of Europe. In short, our country is huge, and not without significant differences between the various regions. The different regions of the country favor different types of music, different foods, and different politics.
I've driven across country many times, and it's amazing how many countries fit into this one country. It's a very diverse place.
Their accent is different, and their lifestyles are a little bit different.
People are different from different parts of the country, as you're finding out, I'm sure. Very different personalities. Personally, I don't think there's one trait of an American.
The ethnic diversity that's in the United States of America, I defy anybody to go to another country and find it as widespread and basically acceptable as it is in the United States.
If I were to say to you, what is your nationality?
I would probably say Irish.
Honestly, like when they do ask me, I say I'm Dominican. That's what I was born.
But I guess I would probably group myself in as just an American.
I consider myself to be an American. I was born in the United States, although my roots are from Mexico.
I think I share a lot of my parents' value system, but I don't think I share everything. Mostly because they're from the Philippines, they were raised there, and like I said, I'm Asian American and they are not. They're American now, but they started Filipino.
It's not about the African Americans, that was never before. Hispanic, Americans, Japanese, Orient. I mean, that's ridiculous. And if these African Americans were born here in this country, they're not born from Africa. That's what I always tell them. I'm American. They look at them, I said, I'm Italian descent, but I'm an American first.
I think that more people should say that they're Americans instead of, you know, whatever nationality that most people say that they are.
Why do you think more people don't answer just American? We always have to break it down further here.
I think because we segregate ourselves in the United States.
I'd like everybody to think they were American first and protect their ethnicity second, but I think it's going to take some time for that to come full circle. There are still people out there that do not like Jewish people, okay? Hispanic people. It exists.
What is America? Is it Native American? Or is it the Caucasians America? We don't know what America is.
I think that we don't really have the history that we cling to as much. Like I've been in Greece and everybody's all proud about being descendants of, you know, philosophers. If I just say I'm American, I don't really know what that means exactly.
So I think we are very different. I think it's very difficult for such a large place to have a unified identity, which I think is a unified American identity is television.
Surely the media and pop culture in general is an important way that Americans from across the continent connect culturally. Over 98% of homes in the United States have at least one television set. "91% of the population report watching the local network news at least occasionally, according to a recent Gallup poll. And with the rise of more news programs, 24-hour news networks, and internet news sites, it seems we have more access to the news than ever before. But do we really? While the murder rate in our nation has been steadily declining over the past 2 decades, the reporting of murders in the media has increased by up to 600%. The number of companies that own a significant portion of all media outlets is steadily shrinking. Today, only about a half-dozen companies control a majority of the mainstream U.S. media. Not surprisingly, a majority of Americans now feel that the news is politically biased one way or another.
Do you trust the media? Like what you read in the papers, do you think it's always the truth?
No, not at all. Media or television, I mean, I think it serves a purpose.
Of course, I compare them, but as a whole, I think most of them are real honest.
They report probably what they're told. Just what they're told may not be what's really going on.
I feel sometimes mad because the media, I think, goes over and makes some false statements.
In years past, when I've been involved in some of the print media, I know that it wasn't 100% truth.
Families and corporations and law enforcement agencies have to have cover-ups.
In retrospect, we see it's in the next news story is how 25 years ago this news story was covered up. There's just historical evidence.
When I go and travel in Europe, their news shows maybe only 15 minutes, but it's 15 minutes of hardcore news. You're seeing the stories, you're seeing the topics, you're not getting off into a lot of fluff pieces about, say like, you know, the Apple diet or somebody did this and shame on you and stay away from here, and you know, all these fluff pieces that are in the media.
I think the news is like ridiculous, like little things that are just stupidest stories I've ever seen. Like, I don't even know why they're reporting on it.
The wrong things are being told. Like, it's good to hear a lot of good things, and mostly everything you hear on the news, they pick out the bad stuff, the things they think people are interested in.
Do you think that everything that's newsworthy makes it into the news? No. What gets left out? Some of the things that, some of the more important things, because the public might not think they're interesting. A lot of times real life gets left out, you know, and things that don't really matter gets blasted all over the media.
They're always skewing things to make a story out of something, always talking it up to make it more sensational of a story.
Do you trust the media? What you see on TV and in the papers?
I don't.
Why not?
Because I'm part of the media. I know what goes on behind the scenes. You know, it's sometimes you just do things for ratings, you know, and you have to, because it all comes down to the business of the business.
Their influence
everything we do. The media does. 100%.
You put anything up on a billboard, put anything up on TV, and it brings a certain amount of emphasis and importance to it.
Well, look at the magazines, like all the fashion magazines. Look how that affects the children, the young girls. Eating disorders. There's a lot of things that affect through the media.
We're just so surrounded in the media with having to be perfect, have the perfect home, have the perfect body, have the perfect lifestyle, money. So I just feel that
we're so money driven. Are we a money-driven society? Our gross domestic product, an important factor in determining a country's economic outlook and overall wealth, seems to indicate yes. An important factor in determining GDP is the personal consumption of goods and services. In plain English, Americans like to shop. Many consider it to be a form of entertainment. One needn't spend much time in the U.S. to realize that most Americans do not consider themselves wealthy. In fact, the median average annual income of $32,000 for full-time workers is pretty consistent with other industrialized nations. So why are we considered so wealthy? Possibly due in part to our wealthiest citizens. Just 1% of the U.S. population controls over 40% of our wealth, and the disparity is growing. No word yet if the poor are getting poorer, but the rich are getting richer. The super wealthy also have a greater ability to protect their assets by holding them in corporations, and can afford to pay to have lobbyists encourage tax breaks for their corporate entities through Congress. According to Forbes magazine, corporate tax shelters cost U.S. taxpayers $10 billion every year.
When you buy stuff, do you think about where your dollar goes after you spend it?
I try to. I can't say that I always succeed in that, but I really do try to be a responsible consumer. But unfortunately, when everything is right there in front of you all the time, it's really hard to say no.
So what are your primary concerns in choosing a product?
Well, you always want the cheapest thing. I think about where it's going in my house or something like that, not where the money is actually going to be. I may need to do that. I may need to be more aware of that, but in a way, it's kind of like no news is good news.
They've colonialized their own people in this country. We're sort of slaves on a level that we can even not see and understand.
There's a lot of people out there that are really misinformed about where their products are going, where their dollar is going after they spend it, what it's being used for.
Once you give the money to the cashier, it's gone anyway. You don't know where it's going anyway.
Are we, as individuals, responsible? Should our government regulate that, or what do you think?
I think it's the producer of it. It's your level of responsibility in society. Do you make the choice? Are you going to have a factory closed up in this country and have a factory open up in another country where people are paid very little amount of money? And if you're just trying to make it from one day to the next and you don't know where you're going to be able to buy your clothes at all, you have very little responsibility.
I think deregulation has caused a lot of unfairness because, basically they're trusting people to do the right thing. Unfortunately, I don't think you can do that.
Most Americans, if they have some political convictions, they don't act on them. Or we have major boycotts throughout this land and economic oppressive would end. The country is run by corporate greed and they're ripping off the resources of all the third world countries in the world.
Why do you think average Americans don't think about
Because people are basically selfish and think just about themselves and their own creature comforts and needs.
They're apathetic. They really just don't care. They have their mind set on more on what the media tells them, sports, music, entertainment, and stuff that they're going to see on TV.
So many people are so driven by what they perceive to be the right thing and keeping up with the Joneses. And what we're doing is we're burning through our resources so quickly in our generation. We're teaching that to our children, and people are not concerned about burning through gas and oil like they used to be. And it's just the wanton waste that we as Americans generate every day. At some point it's going to catch up and it's going to bite us.
So what are Americans passionate about? For many, one answer is religious faith. According to a recent Gallup poll, 60% say religion is very important in their lives, and 86% say it is at least fairly important. 82% of the population report that they have a Christian preference, with Roman Catholic the single largest denomination. 10% consider themselves agnostic or atheist, and millions more are Jewish, Muslim, Buddhist, and Hindu. The sharp divide in public opinion on hot-button topics such as abortion, gay rights, and the death penalty has a strong correlation to religious preference and practice. Our nation was founded on the very idea of religious freedom. The original colonists were religious minorities who were persecuted in Europe because of their beliefs, so they fled across the ocean to the New World. To prevent the same type of persecution on our shores, the very first amendment to our Constitution states, "Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, nor prohibiting its free exercise."
What I dislike about America, not being able to pray in school anymore, for an example. I hate the fact that people are trying to blame everything like the school shootings on the guns. It's not really the guns, it's the fact that they took the morals out of people, so now the only thing that's left is the immorality that we see. Morality comes from Christianity alone. The separation of church and state is really blown way out of proportion what it's supposed to be.
People are much looser on their morals than they used to be. Used to it was pretty strict, but anymore, well, people loosened up on their morals and kind of forgot some of the religion.
Yes, that's what's happened. Freedom is great, and I think if we've taken it into the realm of character, anything goes as far as character goes.
Do you favor prayer in the schools?
Highly. I think when we had prayer in school, we didn't have so much problem in school.
What about separation of church and state? How do you rectify that?
I think you cannot separate church from nothing.
I think it should stay in public schools.
How would you rectify that with that?
Well, That I guess that's what caused all the controversy, because I mean that is the reason why a lot of parents don't want prayer in school, because they feel like their children are being taught something that they don't believe in. I believe that you just have to live the way you truly believe in living and support the oldest proven God there is.
I think it would be a great thing if they would let it back in. I think it's what saves the kids.
How would you rectify that with the American concept of separation of church and state? Like for people who aren't Christian.
Right, yeah. Wait for them to like say.
Just like I just did y'all on spreading Jesus. I gave y'all a religious tape. I'm passing them out at work. And it doesn't matter if I get fired or not.
People down here in the Bible Belt, the American flag is synonymous with Jesus. You know, they would like to have Jesus imprinted over the flag. To them, it's all one and the same. And they don't understand. They don't want to understand separation of church and state. They're intolerant and bigoted in not realizing this country is for atheists, Islamists, Buddhists, and we all don't have the same fix, the same take on what's good for the country, what's good for us as individuals.
Is your family religious? How do you feel about prayer in schools?
I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it needs to be public. I think religion is a personal thing.
Do you go to public school?
Yes.
How do you feel about prayer in school?
I mean, I pray all the time in school, especially around tests. I mean, but I don't think like if someone doesn't want to pray, they should be forced.
The problem you have with when you mix church and state is you have people who will have the power of the state to enforce their religious view or religious opinion, and that's wrong. Things that are of a particular religious view or religious persuasion should remain in the church and not in government. Now, on every dollar bill is "In God We Trust," but that's more of a philosophical bent of the nation as a whole. It doesn't mean that everybody who spends a dollar has to believe in God.
Where did that motto on our money come from anyway? The original official motto of the United States was a reference to our multinational heritage, E pluribus unum, which means out of many, one. In 1956, President Dwight D. Eisenhower approved a joint resolution of Congress declaring "In God We Trust" the new official motto of the United States. It made its first appearance on paper money in 1957. The heightened Cold War with the officially atheist USSR certainly played a role in the U.S. government's decision to sound more officially religious. The phrase "under God" was also added to the Pledge of Allegiance during this time period.
It almost seemed as if we were going to war with them. It got so intense. I can remember, like in an office or a factory, they have air raid drills, and you have to go into the hall. It was supposed to be safer in the hall. if we got hit by the atomic bomb, but I don't think it would do much good, but that's for sure.
Just remember having to duck under my desk and...
I remember in grade school being aware that we could be attacked.
They were building bomb shelters. Of course they were.
Do you remember McCarthyism?
Oh yeah. He made all these charges. I guess they were charged with subversion, and they went to jail, yeah.
A lot of people were shouting, "You're a communist." It was kind of like a witch hunt. People screaming, "Witch, witch."
I sure wasn't in favor of Russia. I was very much against it. You know, because of what they did to their own people and how they mistreated them. See, I always kept an open mind, and I felt sorry for the people, because even today, I don't condemn the people as much as I condemn the leaders that are running the country.
When I lived there, I was 11 when the Soviet Union collapsed. And honestly, I don't remember much of their
the collapse of the Soviet Union because we weren't aware of it in Russia. In Moscow, the way it happened, actually, people were aware of it, but where I lived, there wasn't much television exposure that people actually understood what effect it had on the world, the collapse of the Soviet Union. Only later we realized that actually it was a great deal to the Western world.
If Russia had been in a position to attack this country and take it over, I think that it would have been a legitimate threat. They weren't strong enough to take this country over. Otherwise, they would have.
We were afraid of what they were going to do, and they were afraid of what we were going to do, and like just fear, ignorance. I think they were afraid of us doing the unthinkable, which I think is absurd.
There is an underground city in Beijing, which the Chinese government built to protect themselves, they believe, from an imminent invasion, atomic war attack by the Americans.
Why do you think these fears get so out of control about?
Well, I think there are tools that manipulate people's beliefs, and people want to believe their governments. And if people are not familiar with the way other cultures work, they don't have a clue. They have nothing to judge what they're hearing. It's called propaganda, and people believe what they keep hearing.
The propaganda is saying that the countries are not, they're evil if they're not practicing democracies. And I think a lot of Americans have the tendency to think that's the case. If you're not democratic, you have to be evil in a way.
Now, we've got the Arabs. You know, it's not focused on the Russians anymore, it's focused on the Arab world. So it's kind of shifted. We have another Cold War going on.
You talked before about how people think you're anti-American if maybe you don't agree with the president or whatever. There's some parallels between current situation and like the Cold War, especially the 50s.
No, I wouldn't say the Cold War. You could compare that to McCarthyism, but to be honest, I'm more afraid of it than that. I consider this 1930s Germany. I studied history in college and grad school. The one thing that really frightens me is that everybody thinks that everybody in Germany was a Nazi, and that's not the case. The highest percentage that Hitler ever got in a national election was about 38%. The president actually won on a technicality by about 300 votes in the state of Florida, which, surprise, surprise, his brother happens to be the governor. And if that happened in a foreign country, you would think it was rigged.
Regardless of their opinions about world politics, Americans have long been regarded as a fiercely patriotic people. According to a recent Gallup poll, more than 93% of the population report that they consider themselves at least somewhat patriotic. 65% consider themselves very or extremely patriotic. Immigrants have long been encouraged to be proud of their new homeland, and most have embraced it. After all, they chose to endure hardships to come here to strive for the American dream. American innovation is a big part of that dream. So much of today's important technology was invented right here on U.S. soil. Personal computers, television, the telephone, the electric guitar, the phonograph, the traffic light, assembly line manufacturing, the light bulb, even the very harnessing of electricity. And that's not even mentioning innovations in medicine and popular culture.
What do you like most about America?
Flags. We're free and we don't have to be ruled by any kings or anything. It's a free country. It's free.
Freedom. Freedom.
Freedom. Freedom.
Freedom.
Freedom.
Freedom.
Freedom.
Freedom.
Freedom.
Freedom.
Do you consider yourself to be patriotic?
Yeah, I do.
What does that mean to you?
Well, being nice to people.
Yeah. Even though I don't like baseball, I still cheer for like the teams. I like the New England Patriots.
No, I mean for your country.
Oh.
I guess it just means being, saying the Pledge of Allegiance every morning.
I put the flag out on like Memorial Day, Labor Day, you know.
We need to show our support. And flying the flag is
a little thing, but to me, it means something.
I don't like anybody saying anything against this country. So if you don't like this country, go back where you came from or go and live somewhere where you think it's better.
Okay, what about people who want to make things better here?
What way can they make it better?
It means believing in your country even if they're doing something you don't totally agree with, but you have to support the armed forces.
Supporting our troops.
Support our troops.
I support my country.
And how do you support them?
The other countries don't have what America has. They don't vote.
Being able to like go out and do certain things, like as opposed to other countries where you can't do a lot of things.
Americans tend to, especially the ones, maybe the average Americans who haven't traveled or they don't have the resources to learn about other countries. They tend to be very arrogant or ignorant to say about other cultures and what's going on in other countries.
The land of opportunity mantra. And people come here because it's better here than where they come from. Most of us don't go to other countries because we know that this is the best place to be.
Once a year I go to Vegas.
Florida, California, and Arizona.
Do you have a passport?
No.
No, I don't. But
Okay.
I'm going to get one because I want to go to Hawaii. One of these days, real soon, hopefully.
Have you ever traveled outside of the U.S.?
No.
Why not?
Opportunity, I guess, or lack of.
Why do you think a lot of Americans don't travel abroad more?
I think they can't afford it.
Also, people are maybe a little intimidated by the language barriers, being most people in the U.S. Predominantly speak English.
They're too afraid to venture out.
We're very much just interested in the present and what's right here, and like, what movie am I going to see this week? How's my family doing?
Only 20% of the population hold a valid U.S. passport, which is required for travel outside of North America. While our citizens may prefer to stay at home, our government does not. The U.S. has the world's most powerful military and the most active. The fall of the Soviet Union has rendered the U.S. the world's lone superpower. We possess over 10,000 nuclear warheads, and we're the only nation in the world to have ever used these weapons of mass destruction against another nation. A powerful military costs money. The U.S. spends more than any other industrialized nation on its military, and also has the highest national debt. 40% of our federal government spending goes towards the military.
Nowadays, people don't understand war or having to fight or defend your country. A lot of people actually think that war is wrong, it's bad. America wouldn't be America if we didn't have the Army.
Yeah, I would demand that of my government. I want them to be the dominant superpower. Strictly, if for no other reason, self-defense. Who's going to come after us now? I'm thinking it's pretty unlikely today that the country of Japan is going to want to attack Pearl Harbor. Why? Because we're too strong. We could decimate them in 20 minutes and they know it.
We consider America like the capital of the world, so it's just popular. That's why I'm learning the English. I don't like one thing about the US government, and they are always sticking their nose in other countries. I don't like that, that's all.
I've traveled in Europe, it's been years, but I think if I was over there now, I would, as an American, I don't think we're seen very well by a lot of the world. I would like to see us more as a friendly nation.
I worry about what the other countries, how they're viewing us at this time.
The freedom that we have, I know that we want to share that with people, but it doesn't make us right that we go and destroy other people's governments and countries.
We're always in the middle of it, and we try to help them out, but it seems like we're the bad person.
we always help.
We tend to try to take care of the world opposed to taking care of home first. You go 2 blocks from here, you see a guy laying on the curb, and that's his home.
A lot of homeless people here, there's a lot of people on welfare, things like that. But the first thing you see, we're sending money to these other countries.
I think we help the other countries more than we help our own people.
Basically, politicians are businessmen. They represent the people that control most of the wealth.
The government's a business, and they're in the business of staying in business.
I think that to some degree, I think that I don't know how much the government's for we the people.
I think that a lot of stuff goes on in our government that we don't know about.
You never see the truth, what's going on. You just see whatever they want us to see.
You've got too much corporate money involved in politics now. You've got too much religion involved in politics now.
Things get blown out of proportion because they get politicized. Not because it's right or not because it's wrong, because it's a political agenda.
You have your Democrats and Republicans, and they just kind of polarize each other, and nothing ever seems to get done.
They probably are running a decoy. Let's get their attention over here. Let's stay on this. That way maybe we won't be so hit so hard on why are we still in Iraq? We're losing how many guys a day and how many guys a week?
One issue that has become very politicized in the U.S. within the last couple of years is that of gay rights, especially gay marriage.
Do you think that gay people should be allowed to marry?
No.
Honestly, why not?
It's their personal right. The right given to them by birth. Their natural right. Pursuit of happiness.
I don't know. There's so much legal to that, but when it comes to insurance and everything else.
I find that a difficult concept.
I disagree with it. I mean, in the Bible it says no, so I disagree with it. I mean, I'm not going to go fight against them and stuff like that, but I think it's wrong.
I hope they change their lifestyle. I'd love to see that change, because a lot of the AIDS and all these things that we have that are brought up because people don't live right.
It's not a place like everything else that don't fit into your way of living. I think it's a type of thing. If they get off and live by themselves, it wouldn't bother me. But I don't want them to come in and try to invade my privacy.
They don't pick on me. So why you pick on them? Let them live their lives the way they want to. As long as they're not bothering anybody, leave them alone.
One of the things I found when I was in college is that was not the first thing out of my mouth, like, hi, I'm Mr. Homosexual, how are you? This is my cause. I think one of the things was that you befriend people, they just need to see that you're just, in many ways just like them.
Everybody has different opinions. A lot of people don't agree with the whole situation or whatever, but I think it should be their choice. Anybody's choice. If you don't give them the choice, then you're taking their freedom away.
Our perspective on life is shaped by an almost infinite number of factors: where we grew up, how old we are, our religious beliefs, our community, and our families. What did your parents teach you about our society, about work, and about life in general? What did their parents teach them? Was your great-grandfather an immigrant from Italy? Or was he born into slavery in Virginia? The diversity of our backgrounds can create vastly different views on life. These different perspectives can contribute to a lack of understanding between people. According to a 2004 Gallup poll, 77% of the population personally worry about the state of race relations in the U.S., at least a little. And while there have been great strides towards racial equality in the last 4 decades, we are not there yet. In 2004, the U.S. Senate had a record 14 female members out of 100. However, only 2 of the 100 senators were non-white, with both representing Hawaii. Every president in U.S. history has been a white Anglo-Saxon male, and all but one were Protestants.
But it's still not where it should be. I've had some doors closed because I think of my race. I don't know.
Siempre hay lugares donde no aceptan a los hispanos. En California sí, pero en otros estados no los aceptan, no sé.
Some people are really open-minded and really nice, and then other people are still really closed. They'll be like cheap or, you know, just ignorance.
Aquí hay de todas razas del mundo. Y por lo tanto tiene que haber una consideración, tiene que haber algo de que si estas personas vienen de acá es para vivir. También, no es para hacer el mal, no es para venir a robar carros, no es para venir a asaltar bancos, no, es para, si venimos acá es para trabajar.
How would you estimate that like black and white people get along here?
I think we get along real good.
You think there's like a lot of racism is an issue?
It may be in other places, but I don't think it's here. Yeah, I haven't been a lot of places, but I don't find it here. Maybe in the southern states it still is, but not here.
Some people in the South, there's still some racial. And, yeah. You think it's mostly in the South? Yes. How do you think like black and white people get along here in Georgia?
They don't really. Some of them, I don't know, just like I can get along with a lot of them, but then there's some you can't.
To be honest with you, I probably think it's all the same everywhere. Just I think some people, maybe different regions, tend to hide it a little bit more, be a little more discreet with it.
I don't see it when I'm among whites and blacks, but when I'm along with whites, I hear it.
It's a lot of ignorant people, you know what I'm saying? My black people, we call ourselves niggas. But then again, if a white man call you a nigga, you want to kill that person.
A lot of times it's, doors are slammed, even though I have the credentials to do the job. A lot of times when I just walk in, especially when I'm not dressed my best, people make assumptions, and they make assumptions with my children, you know.
My husband here was born and raised in Arkansas. It took a long time, actually, in the last 13 years that we've been married, when he started to think, oh yeah, the blacks aren't all bad. But when we got married, he talked about the niggers, and I had taught my kids, you don't use names that don't mean anything. So I had to go to him and I said, now I've taught the kids, and actually the kids went to him and said, we don't say that.
I talk with my dad a lot about it. It's not so much as blatant like it once was in the South. It's slight things that if you don't address, it continues.
Do you think there's still a lot of racism in America?
It is.
And do you feel it affects you directly?
Not me, no. Because I'm me regardless.
Do you feel that it affects you directly?
No. And if it does, I don't care, because I feel good with myself. And I love everyone.
If you have a daughter, would you...
No. You talking about going with a black person? No. I mean, I'd rather like the white girl with the white, the black girl with the black, you know. Because, I mean, it's going to just make it bad on the kids when they get in school, how people talk about it.
For the most part, I think it's like an asset to be of a mixed background. I think most people that have a mixed background, they have a unique look. So, I think for the most part, as long as I'm around people that are that I like, I think it works out well.
How would you feel if your daughter married a black guy?
If he loved her, and she loved him, and he was nice to her, I would just try to make it a family.
My son brought home a white girl, the oldest boy, and I took her in, and actually we were more receptive of her in my house than he got going to her house. I would rather accept it and set an example.
Oh no, that wouldn't be. She knows where she'd be. I'd plant her. They have a little place out here where they plant them type people in called cemetery. And no, that wouldn't be. As far as them marrying into my family or marrying into the white, we have it bad for that. It's the worst I've ever seen around. the whites and the blacks mix in.
Some people just hate other people, you know. But I say 85% of people now get along better than they did back when I was going to high school or something like that. That was more like a black and white situation, you know. The whites stay with the whites, the blacks stay with the blacks.
I don't think it is changing, actually. To be honest, I think we're still, because you go to the high schools and there's still Mexicans with Mexicans, Indians with Indians, whites with whites.
Do you remember segregation?
I do. I went to a segregated high school.
Do you remember what it was like when they integrated everything?
I do. And it was difficult. But it was the right thing to do.
How was it difficult?
Well, just people that you've been raised to say are not as good as you, essentially. Then you're in the midst of them, and they really are as good as you.
You still had people whose minds had to go to the point where they will allow the law to come into effect and change things. And society gets there. It gets there slowly, but it gets there.
Going all through school, separated. Didn't really pay a lot of attention to it until I was grown.
Sometimes my grandmother and everything, they couldn't go to certain places because they were like only whites allowed.
You know, in New York, you used to go into the back of the bus when you get in the bus, so you make room for the people. So when I got on the bus, I walked towards the back of the bus. The bus driver called me right away towards the front. And he goes, "Where you going?" I says, "Of course, to the back of the bus." He goes, "No, don't leave the Negroes back there."
Do you think that everyone in America is treated the same and has the same opportunities to succeed?
Yeah, but not a long time ago, though. Until Martin Luther King Jr. came along.
Okay.
He made this world, this country, a better place.
Oh yes, I remember all of that. Yeah, it's changed. It's changed a lot from what it used to be. It's changed for the better.
From 25, 30 years ago, I mean, it's come a long way, you know, a long way.
I used to think that maybe, maybe someday we'd all be a pretty shade of mocha. I can't say that at this point that I'm willing to run out and live my life that way, but I think it would be nice at some point.
I think it should be a lot better than it is. You know, I remember growing up like in the 60s and 70s and thinking, well, in the year 2000 everything will be fine, you know, and I'm really disappointed that it's not.
You hear people all the time say, I'm not prejudiced. I went to school black, I went to school white. No matter how you do it, there's a difference between whether it's a positive or a negative prejudice, it's a difference. So I think the best thing to do to how to resolve all of it is to admit it. Stop denying it. Once you admit it, you got a fair chance of solving it. But first you got to admit that there's a problem.
Fix racism? Nah. Unless everyone just starts being nicer to everybody. But I guess like just where people are from, how their parents raised them, that would be the only way to fix it.
And I'd like to say that I commend the teenagers of today because they are really picking up the ball and doing stuff that people didn't do in my generation. They're getting along better, they're more accepting of each other, and so I really applaud the teenagers of today. I think they deserve a little more credit than what they get.
Massive social and civil changes have been a constant in our nation's short history, and they show no signs of slowing down. While some changes are surely considered improvements, others may not be. And we still have a ways to go in many areas.
about most right now is my grandchildren, what kind of a world they're going to grow up in, my great-grandchildren. And I think everything has changed in my life, and I think in their life it's going to be a much bigger change.
My kids' future.
Just recently, all this terror stuff is a little scary.
The future for my children, what the economy's going to be like, their safety.
You know, when he grows up, how things are going to be, how the world's going to be.
I always tend to look back to how Native Americans were treated, and we were treated in a very similar manner to what is going on today. You can't change people and their cultures and their governments like, you know, within a year or a couple years. That takes time. We just can't go into countries and start dictating.
Different cultures are growing closer and closer because the world is smaller now, because travel is so accessible.
World Wide Web has changed a lot of people's thinking, the ability to communicate across the world in split seconds. It's changed everybody. People are realizing that we're all one big community living on Earth. We have to get along.
The fact that we've got tons of information now at our fingertips, and that every generation now is almost like a total rebirth, and with all the information on hand, I think change can happen a lot faster than it has ever before. So I think that's part of the way things will, the past will kind of get let be, and we can move on.
We will never all be the same, nor have the same views on life. Hopefully, together we can figure out how to live in harmony despite our differences. Our nation is not a machine. Our nation is made up of people. And just as our past, both as individuals and as a nation, has formed us into who we are today will shape who we become in the future.
What do you want to do for a living when you get older?
I want to be in the Navy on a sub like what my dad does. I want to become a police officer and help the people in my neighborhood.
That's a great question. I don't know. I want to act.
Ballerina.
A scientist.
A doctor. An inventor.
A football player.
I'll be a teacher.
Do you like school?
Not really.
I want to be a pilot.
I want to be a vet.
I like to learn new things and just really expand on what I know.
You make a difference as far as the way people treat each other.
Nice person and a good mom and all that average American stuff.
What are some things that we could do to make America an even better place to live? What would your advice be?
Try to make peace with all the countries in the world.
Don't try to be perfect. Just be your own self.
What are some changes you'd like to see?
People picking up trash wherever they see it.
Don't run red lights.
Question authority. America, get off the couch and do what you gotta do.
I think as individuals we need to wake up and kind of realize what's going on around us and start, care.
If all people be nice, the world will be nice.
I think everyone just needs to be nicer to each other.
Most of the time, if you get to know people, they're pretty nice folks, really.